Good morning and welcome to probably what is episode 40 of Engine Talk, and today's episode is going to talk about several different things here. One of them is what I've got on the mat here in front of you, but I want to just say first that I have maybe about an hour and a half or 2 hours a day, if even that at times, to spend on this hobby, making videos and stuff like that. So sometimes things in my life work really quickly, and other times things go very, very slowly. And the things I'm going to talk about here first is this engine that's on my table right now, which is, that's not this one, that's the wrong one. I jumped ahead there. It is, where is that? This engine right here, which is the remnants, or not the remnants, I should say. It's the all the pieces of my OS FS90. So this engine I disassembled back in May of 2020, May 22nd of this year. And that was because it was called the first run disaster, and it was because I had a screw come loose on this timing wheel and damage, if not completely destroy, the connecting rod. So I'm just now getting around to looking at this engine again, and I'm not going to be able to do much today other than just show you some things that I'm considering here. So I have a good friend, Harvey, who assisted me in this, and he actually had a replacement connecting rod for this engine. Now you may have to go back to that video, and I can link that video at the end of this so you can see what happened with this engine. But basically, this connecting rod here, the screw came loose and stopped the engine cold, and the connecting rod was damaged. So Harvey sent me a different connecting rod for this engine, which is wonderful, and I thank you very much for that, Harvey. So the next order of business was find a replacement screw for the one that was damaged. And I believe I have done that. I know I have done that. I found this is the replacement screw. This is the screw that came off the engine, and as you can see, it's a little bent because of what happened. But so here's the thing with this. When I posted this video, I had a lot of people commenting, or not a lot, I should say, several people commenting saying, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you do this? And whatever, to firmly attach that better. And I think the bottom line was I simply just made a mistake in this, and I just don't think that I torqued this screw enough when I put it together, and I think that was just simply a mistake on my part. I just don't think I screwed it tight enough. So the thing I want to show you here is, and I'm going to see if I'll zoom in here right now so that we can get a closer look at this. So the thing I was just looking at was, this was interesting because here's the screws, the old one and the new one. So obviously and they've got some kind of polarity thing going on here where they don't want to be too close to each other. So I'm going to have to cut this screw down. And I started thinking to myself, well, how is the best way for me to do that? Sure, I could try and put my goggles on and fixture this thing in a vise and use a Dremel cutoff wheel and cut that down. But before I did that, I'm thinking, well, the other thing I could do is maybe just grip it in some vise grips real tight, and then just use the grinding wheel, or the grinder that Harvey also provided to me, and just slowly grind it down. So I'm thinking, okay, one of the things I was thinking was, is this screw that was in here, is it even the stock screw? Because I got this engine, it was used. I have no idea what the history of that engine was. I have no idea if that's the stock screw or washer or anything, because, you know, there's this washer. There's the washer. I thought I had the washer in here. Let me throw it against there. No. Did I lose it, or is it stuck in here? I think the washer is actually in here. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so there's the washer. The washer was in there. So here's the thing. Excuse me. I'm going to put up an exploded parts breakdown of this engine so that you can see what I'm talking about, and I'm going to look at it here too. So I've got it zoomed in just on this little area where the crankshaft is, and it shows that screw and washer and timing wheel. So it only shows those two parts, the screw and a washer. There's no lock nut or anything like that. Now somebody had a great idea, and so that washer also, I don't know if this washer is stock. I mean, I have no way of knowing that. All I can say is, let's pretend that it is. And someone had an idea of using, I can't remember what it's called, one of those curved washers, a compression washer, I think it was. And they're like, well, use a compression washer. And I'm thinking, well, that's a wonderful idea. How in the hell do I go about finding the compression washer that's got the proper OD and ID to use here? So I'm looking at this exploded parts breakdown, and I'm thinking, well, let's just figure that maybe these parts are stock. And if that's the case, then how do they get retained? And someone said, well, just put Loctite on there. And I was thinking about Loctite, and I'm like, well, I don't ever really want to put Loctite on a fastener in an engine, just because it's going to make it very, very difficult to ever take it off in the future if you ever need to, which I can't say that I would ever need to for sure, but you never know. Because of the fact that if you ever watch me disassemble one of these engines, trying to get a hex drive or anything to hold this thing in place, because it's going to want to turn while you're unscrewing it. Hold that thing in place while you're trying to unscrew this is really challenging. It's challenging when there's not Loctite on it. And I can only imagine how much more challenging it would be with Loctite on it. So I don't know. So anyway, so I got to figure out, am I just going to cut that with a Dremel and hope I'm right? Or am I just going to grind it down and take this out there and just kind of keep setting it up there and hope that this is the stock length? Because here's what I was also doing. I did a little stack up thing here where I put this screw, this washer, and this little drive gear in here, and I screwed it together, and I determined that, fortunately for me, this thing is threaded really deep. So there's plenty of room for me to have this too long, but you don't want it too short. So I can easily make a mistake by having it too long, but not too short. So right now, sometimes that thing would just stick right in there. Right now, yeah, it's not wanting to stick in there right now. Right now, that's how far extended that head is with this fully threaded in there. So this is the proper stack up, one washer, the screw. So in theory, I could cut, that much off the tip and I'd be good. So here's the next thing I started doing, which I thought was really, really interesting. And it's like, okay, so I'm thinking about the length of this screw and what it needs to be. What's the clearance really like? Because this is a standard socket head. It's not trimmed down, it's not flattened out or anything. It's not a thinner head than normal. And again, I have to go into, thinking that maybe that's a stock part. So I started looking at this thing, and I'm holding this screw tight in here, and it's got that washer on there, and you can see, hold it tighter, you can see how much it protrudes. It probably protrudes, I don't know, 2 millimeters? At least 1 millimeter, probably about 1.5 millimeters. Is it easier if I do it against paper? 1.5 millimeters or so. So then I started thinking, okay, well, that's why I've got this here. Let's see, what does this look like when we've got the connecting rod installed on here, as it should be, with that little lip, or the end piece that engages in this. And now let's look at this. And now it's going to be really tough to see. I'm trying to figure out how I can show this to you. Maybe if I put this piece of paper down here as a white background. So I've got this engaged in here. Yeah, that'll work. And you can see there's not a whole lot of clearance there between where that connecting rod normally rides and where the head is. And I'm pulling this screw out, so it's fully seated as it is. So you're saying, the point I'm trying to make here is you can't be adding another washer. Because if you were to add a washer, then you're going to probably have to flatten the head. You're going to have to lose some head, and I can guarantee you that losing some head engagement is not going to be a good thing if you ever have to take this thing off again. You want every bit of head that you've got there to engage, to tighten or loosen it. So thinning the head is not an option. So therefore it also means that probably adding another lock washer is not an option, because, or even if you substitute this washer for a lock washer, because of the fact that that's your hole. So any lock washer is usually smaller than the head. And then you don't really have enough space here to securely hold that. So it's got to have this washer, it's got to have this screw to the proper length, and then it's got to have the proper torque and or something to hold it, because there's just not a whole lot of room to play with there. So there's not a whole lot of room for error. And you know, is this an error on OS's part, a design issue? Potentially. Maybe other people have had this same type of thing happen. I mean, so the criticality of security of this screw is obviously very important, as we've seen. And now I'm only showing how much more critical it is when you look at the stack up of this engine like this. So anyway, those are the things I'm dealing with. I just started looking at that and I thought it was an interesting point. So I just wanted to kind of show that. Not like I'm in the position to do anything about that today, because I'm just not. I just saw that and I don't know that I have time to really go mess with this. But the other part of this Engine Talk episode is that I wanted to talk about my time and all the things that I've got going on right now. So that engine has been sitting here disassembled like that since May 22nd. You know, Harvey sent me the connecting rod. I got the connecting rod over a week ago. So I've had all the things that I need to do to, you know, put that together. I just haven't had the time. And let me show you why I'm saying time. Right here is another bin of an engine, and this is an Enya. Is this an R120 or is it just a 120? I can't recall. Let's see here. No, this is an Enya 120, not the R120. It's just an Enya 120 that was given to me like this in pieces to see if I could revive. It's not a customer's engine. It was a gift to me, and it's just one of those things. It's sitting here. So we've got this engine sitting here in pieces that I haven't had a chance to do anything with. Let's look here at the next engine that I've got in pieces. So this is an Enya 19X that I made a Boca bearing video on and replaced the bearings. And let's take this thing off here, connect. Replace the bearings, this beautiful engine. The only thing that I'm waiting on here is I had to have a gasket made for this. And this was my little template. And so Rich at ICBIM Products has got a gasket made and it's on its way to me. So I've been holding off on this, reassembling this engine until I get a gasket. And thank you very much, Jeremy, for actually purchasing that gasket. So the funny story with that is, and I don't know if Jeremy's going to appreciate me telling this story, but I'm going to, is that Jeremy actually had a gasket for that. He had sent me a picture, text message, says, "Here's this, is this the gasket you need?" And I was like, "Yep, that's the gasket I need." He's like, "Cool, I'll package it up and I'll send it to you with some other parts." And then he lost the gasket. And he searched and searched and searched, and he can't find the gasket anywhere. So it's not funny, but it's kind of funny. But all the time that he had showed me that, I had already submitted drawings to in a template to Rich to make a gasket. He came back with something that, and I cut it out and it wasn't right. So I ended up having to send him my torn gasket, tape it together the best I could, send it to him so he could actually use the gasket to make it with. So here's the next engine that I've got. Let's talk about another one here. So I've got all these projects going on right now, basically, is the bottom line. Here's a project that a buddy of mine, Floyd, just called me out on a couple days ago. And this is two YS FS45 engines. This one is the one that Floyd gave to me. He's like, try and revive this engine. It's a wonderful gift. And I put this engine back together. God, this is a long story, and I hope you stick with me here on this. So when Floyd sent me this beautiful YS engine, it had been in a crash, and you can go back and maybe look at that Engine Talk episode, but it didn't have an exhaust. So I searched. Oh, wow, I had screws. I got screws coming loose. I searched and searched and searched, and it took a long time to find an exhaust. And I ended up having to spend a lot more than I expected just to get an exhaust, because this is a strange bolt pattern. This is not just any old exhaust will fit this big, because I went through every exhaust I have, and I couldn't find one that even came close. So it's like, shit. If I'm going to run this engine, I either have to have an exhaust, a muffler, or a tuned pipe, which of course I didn't have that either. So I ended up finding a crashed YS45 FS that just so happened to have the muffler installed on it that I wanted. So I got that. So I ended up getting two of these engines. One is in really bad shape. The crashed engine's in really bad shape. So anyway, I put all this back together. I had some new gaskets and all that kind of stuff, and I started to run this YS in the garage, no camera or anything. I just was like, yeah, let's just run this thing. I want to get it running before I put it on camera. And it didn't run. It had massive fuel leak from someplace. It looked like maybe the front housing, but that didn't make any sense. So I was thinking, it's got these long screws that hold the regulator and then the carbon on place. And I found out that other people have had issues where these screws that go up through the bottom of the carb and thread in here can get stripped out easily. So I found that the first carb, I had all these screws, and if they're off the engine and you just thread it in there, it feels like it threads in there fine and it's solid. But then when you stack it all up and put it together, I had one screw that just wasn't tightening, and I was like, oh crap. So luckily I had two engines. So I had to go through all these iterations, and I have to go through all these iterations again now, because now all these parts are jumbled up, to try to find one. And I did. I replaced the carb, found different screws. So I went through about 3 iterations of putting this thing together with the same result. It was still leaking fuel so badly that it wouldn't run. It would start up and run for 3 seconds, and then it would stop. So just another one of these projects I'm working on. Floyd really would like to see this thing run. I would really like to get this thing running, but now I've kind of lost my way here, and I'm not sure. I'm going to have to start from ground zero. So what it turned out being was, I think this is the crankcase from the second engine, and this is the crankcase from Floyd's engine. So if the fuel leak is around here and not here, because I already replaced carb and regulator and I still had the leak, the only thing left for me to do would be to replace the crankcase. So that would mean that I have to gut this engine and put all that stuff in this crankcase, and at least try to retain that some of this is Floyd's engine, because at this point I don't know that I'm actually going to be able to say when I have one of these running, oh, that's Floyd's engine. I don't think I'm going to be able to say that, because it's not going to be. It's going to be a hybrid created. So anyway, that's another project that I've got going on. Let's look at, here's another project I've got going on. This is an OS FS90 Surpass that was given to me by my Swamp Juice buddy Garrett. This is all disassembled, and it's just sitting here waiting for me to get an operational, a second prototype from Boca of their cam bearing removal tool that they're developing, because the first one they gave to me, I didn't even make videos of. I did make a video of. I sent it straight to Boca showing that it was not properly made. And for me to, I need test subjects for engines for when I get another prototype tool. I did actually try to use their prototype tool, and at 3 instances it refused to remove a bearing, so it's not working at this time. So they're making some updates to it. So this engine is sitting here in a state of limbo, just waiting for another prototype or several prototypes of Boca's bearing removal tool, cam bearing removal tool, to come to me so I can test it. Because, you know, if they're going to send me this tool, a prototype, I have to be able to test it. And I can't just say, oh, it pulled one bearing one time, so it's good. So I had other engines here, and I ended up having to go through them and actually fix them and get them out of here, because I can't hold up a customer's engines waiting on a tool from Boca. So this one is my engine. I'm holding on it, but I'm going to need more test subjects. And then here is another engine that, in my infinite wisdom, I decided I needed to take another engine apart yesterday. And this is a Rossi 65. And this is going to be the subject of a bearing replacement video. And I can tell you this was not a pleasant engine to disassemble. It was really, really difficult. It's one of those ones where it took extreme effort to get that sleeve out of that case. So anyway, the bottom line is, I have so many different things going on, and I've got more customer engines going. So when the customer engines come, obviously they take priority, and my engines take a back seat to everything. So that's why it sometimes seems like things don't move as quickly as I would like. But anyway, enough of my rambling. Thank you for watching, and that concludes this Engine Talk episode.